right. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. Today we have Matt Picheny with us. Matt is a real estate investor, Tony Award winner, and author of the #1 best-selling book, Backstage Guide to Real Estate. Matt, I am super excited to have you on here. Thank you very, very much for hopping on the show.
Hey, Gabe, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I told you before we got on here, we like to start with stories. We like to hear how people got to where they are today. It sounds like you got a good one. So why don't you take us back to the beginning? How'd you get started in real estate?
It's a little bit of a long story, but
It's all good. We got time. We got
all
time.
right, good. So I grew up in Orlando, Florida, moved to New York City to pursue a career in theater, to be an actor. So I did that, was pretty successful for a few years, started getting involved in computers in the mid 90s. And I ended up starting my own company, doing website development, little boutique agency in New York City. And that was going great. And then 2001 came along and the dot-com bubble burst, and all of my clients were going out of business and my business was imploding.
Yeah.
And as fate would have it, right at that time, I got a call from my landlord, and they told me I had 90 days to get out of the apartment that I was living in.
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So that was kind of a rude awakening for me. I mean, I wanted to stay in New York, but how do I find a place to live with no real job, with no real business? I mean, my business had fallen apart, right? So how could I go ahead and do that? I ended up getting a job at Showtime, the cable television channel, where they were a client of mine. And so they offered me a job in house. And instead of renting, I ended up buying a place. I bought a co-op apartment way uptown in New York, up in the Washington Heights area. So not necessarily where I wanted to live, but where I could afford a down payment on a place to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And a little over 2 years later, I sold that apartment, and I saw that my initial investment, my down payment on the property, had more than quadrupled in value.
And you're like,
And
wait a second, there must be something to this.
exactly. It's exactly right. So, yeah, I had heard real estate, it's a great investment and things like that. My dad actually had been in real estate as a residential agent and broker for a little while, and then he went into the food service industry. So yeah, I'd always heard about real estate, but never really had it have an impact on my life. I had a decent salary at that point, but I saw in that one transaction, I made more than a whole year's worth of salary. So I just wanted to figure out, how do I make that happen again?
Yep.
And that's what set me on the path. Now that was a primary home. I used the proceeds from that to buy a new primary home in the area of town that I wanted to live in. So that was great. And then about a year later, I bought a piece of land in Connecticut, a piece of raw land, just, had a bunch of trees on it. It was in a subdivision, but this was just about an acre of trees. And eventually, a few years later, we cut down those trees and built a house.
Okay.
That house was, my initial intention was going to be a vacation rental. But once we got that certificate of occupancy, because of things that were going on in my personal life, I was dating someone who ended up being she's my wife now. Her folks had a place on the other side of the state of Connecticut. So we could go there, and people were offering me money to stay at the house. So it was always a rental. And having that rental, that like vacation rental home, is what I think really set me on the path to where I am today, where, now I have over 10,000 apartment units that I'm invested in. 2/3 of that portfolio are deals that I am a passive investor in. I'm a limited partner. I just have to make sure that I like the sponsor, that I like the market, that I like the deal. I give them my money, and then that's all I can do, because I'm a limited partner, and just trust that they're going to execute on their business plan. And most of them, for the most part, do. And those that don't, I don't invest with in the future. But 1/3 of my portfolio are deals that I'm a general partner on. I'm leading or part of the leadership team of those, and I put my own money in them, and I bring investors in if they're interested. We do a syndication model, and that's my main focus, because that I'm involved in sort of the day to day. I'm not at the property, but definitely very involved in the asset management and talking with property management on a at least weekly basis, usually on a daily basis.
Nice, man. I love it, man. There's so much to unpack there. I'm glad that you do so much limited partner investing, because that's not what we don't talk about that often here. We always talk about being the general, being the sponsor, but people don't realize that being a limited partner and making that a focus, getting really good at finding good sponsors, and really growing your portfolio through investing in other people's deals is a very good way to go about investing in real estate. So I want to get to that, but before we do, your story really caught my attention. It was pretty good. First of all, you went through the dot-com crash, which had to have been, I know that your business crashed at that point, and I'm really sorry that happened. But it had to have been an interesting time to live in, because man, that's one of those periods in history that just everything kind of went upended. And I think about the Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrencies today. It's got to be pretty similar. But after that, you went and it sounds like your real estate story has really been kind of serendipitous. You bought that apartment in New York, happened to make a lot of money on it, and that kind of got the ball rolling. And then you happened to rent out that apartment out in or that house out in Connecticut, and that got your eyes open to cash flow, to actually owning property, having it bring income every single month. And I love that, once you hit that point, it was balls to the walls. You were going forward. This is your path. So what got you from that one rental that you had out in Connecticut, to kind of where you decided that you wanted to go full bore in real estate? What was kind of the transitioning period where you just decided this is going to be my entire focus?
So, Gabe, I wanted to touch on one thing that you had mentioned, because I want to agree with what you were saying. It really was sort of serendipitous for a while, right? I mentioned in my book, I was following my nose. I was just kind of like doing things that seemed right. Luckily, some of the things that I was doing, I learned later as I started to really learn what I'm supposed to do. I had been doing things like value add. I didn't know it was called value add. I was just like, oh yeah, I improved the property and I could charge more rent or whatever, things like that. That I didn't know they were actually a strategy. There was also things that I was doing that weren't good that I learned as well. But then eventually I got serious, and that's, I think, what you were talking about is kind of when's that time that I went and I decided that I'm going to do this full time. I'm going to be serious about this, and that really came at a point where I got married, and my wife and I were living in a property. This is another thing that we just kind of did. I was looking for a place for us to live, and I found a place that had it was a 2-family. I basically did what's called a house hack now. I didn't know that there was a term for this thing. I just knew the numbers, right?
And that's the thing, is all these strategies that people say, they're just common sense things that make sense. And you don't have to know the strategy to be in the situation and be like, yeah, this makes sense to do this. Let's do it.
Yeah, I fell into that. I was looking for places for us to move to, because my wife was pregnant and we needed something a little bigger than our little 1-bedroom we had in Manhattan, and we ended up going into Brooklyn and looking at places, and one of the places that I happened to look at was a 2-family. I mean, it was just on the market. It was on the high end of our price range, but then once I started running the numbers on it, because I liked the place, I was like, oh wait, this is actually cheaper than some of the other places because we get that rental income, right? And then all of a sudden it changed the world for me and changed the criteria of what we were looking for in Brooklyn. And we ended up finding a great place. So we were in that place for just about a year. Our daughter was a little over a year old, and my wife got approached completely out of the blue with a phenomenal job opportunity, but it was in Miami, Florida. So I had never been a fan of Miami. I grew up in Orlando, Florida, so I knew Miami, and it's a fun kind of, town to go to, but I didn't want to like necessarily raise a family there, right? But this was a tremendous opportunity for my wife for her career. So we decided to do it, and we moved down there, and I was still working in digital marketing. So at this point in time, if you would have asked me what sort of my plan was for real estate, I wanted to save up enough money to buy another 2-family in Brooklyn, like the one I had bought, because I knew based off the rent that we had was paying more than half the mortgage. The unit we were living in, we had renovated, so it was even nicer, and it had a backyard. So I knew as soon as we moved out of there, it would be cash flowing. And I thought, hey, if I save up, because townhouse in Brooklyn is not a cheap not a cheap ticket item, right? It's pricey. So I was like, well, maybe if I save up for like 5 or 6 years, maybe I'll have enough for a down payment on another one. And that's kind of what I was thinking of. And so when we moved to Miami, I was still in that mindset, and I was looking for a job in advertising. In New York, I had it easy because there's so many advertising jobs, and I had just networked so much that I had been getting recruited out of one agency into another, into my whole career. I mean, that's the way it was. When I got down to Miami, I knew nobody. I had no network down there. And also the size and the scale was very different. In New York, I was managing a department of 20 people. We'd be working on projects that had teams of, literally hundreds of people. I went down to Miami, and there's like 10 people in the entire agency, right? So it's just a very different scale. And I was burned out from doing the real estate stuff. I didn't really want to, from doing the digital marketing stuff, the agency stuff. I didn't really want to do it anymore. And I was listening to some audio books. I was listening to Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Of course.
That one always comes in, and
it always comes in.
Story, right? So I was listening to that audio book, and I was also listening to the cast album of Hamilton. So as I mentioned, I had moved to New York to pursue a career in theater. Interestingly enough, my wife works in theater. She's on the business side of Broadway, and we had invested, luckily, into Hamilton.
Oh, interesting. Into the actual production of the play.
Yeah, to the Broadway production of
cool.
Hamilton. Yeah, which was phenomenal, right? We loved the show. We had seen it downtown before it moved to Broadway and loved it. Had an opportunity to put a teeny little piece of money into it, and it's done very well. It's still running, but we loved the show, and also we had invested in it. So like we just listened to the album all the time. It was a great cast album, and I'm sitting there, in Miami, about 2 months in, going out for these job interviews I don't really like. Listening to Robert Kiyosaki talking about creating passive streams of income, like doing it through real estate. And, I was like, I should do this. Like, I've been doing this as a hobby for 10 years and have done pretty darn well. And like, I should do this full time. But I obviously had a voice of doubt. Like, I didn't want, should I do, I don't know. Like, am I going to do? And then I, was listening to the cast album of Hamilton. I'm listening to the song My Shot, where he's talking about taking his shot. And like the whole cast at the end of the song is like, take your shot, take your shot. And I was like, you know what? I just got to do it. This is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. So I sat down with my wife and was like, hey, this is what I want to do. And she was 100% fully supportive of me doing that. And financially for us was a little tight for the first few years, like really tight, but made it work. And took me about 6 months into saying, hey, I'm going to do real estate full time, to finding out about syndication. I didn't know syndication existed.
Yep.
My initial plan was, I'm going to flip houses. And with the capital I generate from that, I'll either hold on to those flips or buy, maybe turnkey or other things, just so that I could have some buy and hold real estate that I would hold long-term, because I realized that flipping wasn't necessarily investing. It was kind of more of like a
business
job. Yeah, it's a business. There's nothing wrong with that, but I wanted to have things that would end up being passive, right? That was the goal, was to go have as much passive income as possible. So I found out about syndications and fell in love with that idea. Now I didn't have to wait 5 or 6 years of saving up my own money to buy that townhouse in Brooklyn. I've never bought another townhouse in Brooklyn, but metaphorically, right? But if I had other investors who were interested, and by the way, I had friends of mine who were always like, "Hey, if you ever need money on one of your deals, like I know you're flipping these houses and doing this, and you seem to be doing great. Like I would love to invest." But I always turned them down because I was like, well, you know what? I mean, like it's such a little amount of money, and it didn't seem to make sense. But now I'm like, oh wow, if I scale this and like get 20, 30, 40 people involved, then it sort of makes sense. And so I went down that road.
Perfect, man. I love that trajectory. And a lot of people when they get started, they don't realize they think that they need their own money to do real estate, which when you just get started, you generally do. But you can, once you get a little bit of experience in your belt, you can definitely go the syndication route, which really opens up the options. So I kind of want to talk about LP investing, about being a limited partner. I know you have a syndication experience as the GP, which is super valuable. But we don't often talk about being an LP here, so I want to dive into that a little bit. It sounds like you have a lot of experience. When you go to invest as a limited partner in a deal, and you're vetting the sponsors, what are you looking for in the project, in the sponsor, in basically everything? What are you looking for in the deals that you invest in?
That's a really good question, Gabe. Matter of fact, I talk about that in depth in my book. And I have a free resource on my website, like right on the homepage of my website, where you can download some of those things. It's called Quickly Sizing Up a Syndication. But I'm going to give you the overview, right? Which is I'm looking at 3 things when I'm looking at a syndication. I'm looking at the sponsor, I'm looking at the market, and then I'm looking at the deal itself. So I call those the 3 deal pillars. And the most important of those is the sponsor. And I go into detail in the book and stories about how I learned these things and why they're important. But the sponsor is the most important. A sponsor can really make or break that deal for you. I've had deals, like I said, I talk about in the book, this deal that really we should have lost money on, and only because the sponsor was really good and just kept his foot on the gas that we were able to not lose money. We made like a 3% profit. I think we were in the deal for 3 years. So it was like, I mean,
that is kind of disappointing, but at least you didn't lose money. that is good.
Yeah, if you factor in inflation, we probably lost money. If you factor in like we lost opportunity costs, I could have invested in something else. These were good real estate years too. Like probably anything else I would have made money on. But the bottom line is I put in X amount and I got X plus the teeniest little bit. So right, I didn't lose money. So I felt good about that. But it really made me realize like, wow, the sponsor is like so important. Really, really important.
But before you go on, so that it was a good sponsor, which is your first pillar. You have sponsor, market, and then the actual deal itself. I think that's a great way to break it down. This deal had a good sponsor, so that means one of the other 2 pillars was not good. Which of the 2 pillars did you kind of falter on there?
I think the faltering was on the other 2 pillars.
Both of them.
I think there was, I mean, I guess ultimately there was they all go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I think the sponsor did not do a great job in their analysis of the market and their business plan and their underwriting, like you just said. So that was problematic. But when we're talking about the sponsor, like some of the questions that you're going to want to know and some of the things you're going to want to look for from a sponsor is, well, I get the first thing I ask everybody if they're asking about a deal is how did you meet the sponsor? Like if you got a random Facebook Messenger message from them, hey, I got this awesome deal, Gabe, you're going to double your money in 5 months, that's really suspect, right? I worry about that. And listen, I'm on social media. I'm very active. I do reach out to people from time to time on social media. So like, I'm not saying that it's not good, but I never am like, hey, here's this great deal. Like, if there's someone and there's some sort of connection and I think we should talk, maybe I'll do that. But other than that, it's kind of weird. So that's one of the things you might want to know. You might want to know, like, what is that person's background? What have they done? Have they done any other deals? Do they have a track record? Is this their first deal? So there's a few different questions around that. And then the next thing that I look at is the market. So what is the market? In this particular deal, I didn't really know the market, which is fine. But the sponsor,
what market was it, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I don't. So it's if anybody is listening to this podcast and reads my book or whatever, I don't want to. I don't want to. Well, no. What I'm saying is, like, I changed names and locations to protect the innocent, right? Like, I just don't want to, So in the book, we're going to say that this property was in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Okay, and the only thing I know about Albuquerque, New Mexico is that Bugs Bunny always made a wrong turn there in the cartoons when I was a kid. Like, I always remember
bad directions in Albuquerque.
Yeah. I should have made a left turn in Albuquerque. I remember he always says that. So I was like, oh, cool, Albuquerque. But I was told, because see, there's there's the market, like the larger market itself, in this case, like, the city of Albuquerque, but that's not all there is. There is the particular location where the property is, right? There's a submarket within Albuquerque. Absolutely. And even within a submarket,
individual blocks, like the corner of a specific block, can have problems. You just really got to know where you're investing.
Exactly. I mean, I live in Brooklyn, New York, and literally adjacent to my property is a brand new built high-rise, super luxury condo building. Okay. At the end of my block, there are housing projects.
Yep.
Okay, low income housing projects. So it's literally one little block here in New York. So one block could make a big difference in real estate values, right? Our sponsors of that deal, I think, had thought that they were in a better location than they were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then the business plan itself. So that's so the market, like I said, those are some of the things I talk about. Like, what is the market? Where are you? Are you drilling in? Don't look at just the entire like MSA, but drill in, get as tight as you can. What's going on in that market? Job growth, diversity of employers, right? You don't want to be in one place that just is run by. I'll pick on Elon Musk for a minute here. Let's say everybody in that job works at Tesla. And Tesla, let's say Twitter. That'll work, because that's very timely. Let's say everybody in that town works at Twitter. We know there was a bunch of layoffs at Twitter. Then all of a sudden, half of your tenants do not have jobs. That's a problem, right? So if you can find a place that has, people who work at Twitter and Tesla and Facebook and whatever, diversity of different places, that's really good. And different sectors would be nice too, right? So that if oil and gas gets hit, that was a big problem with people who have properties in Houston. I have properties in Houston. Houston has really diversified their employment base now, so it's not such a big deal when oil and gas is. I mean, still could be tough, but there are other types of jobs. A lot of other
Port City, a whole bunch of stuff. Yeah, well, it's not Port City.
So
it's near the coast.
That's the market, right? And then we look at the deal itself and the underwriting of the deal. The problem these guys have with the underwriting of the deal, which also lends back to the market, but really the deal, it was, the rent growth that they had believed they would get was not right. Their occupancy was not what it was. They also over improved the property. So they went in. Well, it was a critical miscalculation. I think they thought they're going to get the rents to X amount by really making this almost like an A-class property.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because they thought that the submarket supported that, and it didn't. Yeah. So they started renovating units and putting in like granite countertops and just like really high-end finishes that are very expensive, and we were not able to get the rents that they had projected. Yeah. And Yeah. So that's so the underwriting can go into a lot of those different things. I talk in the book in detail about like exit cap rates and rent growth and how you should figure all of these things out. The mathematical, there's not that much math in the book. It's super basic math. I actually didn't want the book to be like a textbook, so it's a lot more story and interesting stuff and jokes, but it does teach and goes in depth on a couple of those key factors that you need to look at as a passive investor.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave it as a cliffhanger. If you guys want to get more into that, we'll go over the link again here so you can grab that book. But I just checked the clock. We have gone through our time. So I do have to push us into the quick question round. Are you ready?
Awesome.
Let's get going. It actually does start with books, as we would have it. So give me two recommendations, one for general life wisdom and one for real estate specific.
Okay. So look, I'm not going to take Rich Dad Poor Dad because we already talked about that. My book's awesome too, but I recently read Ray Dalio's Principles for the Changing World Order, which is fantastic. I think it covers kind of both of what you're talking about, right? Because it doesn't get into the nitty-gritty of real estate mechanics, but it does talk about sort of the macroeconomic world and like since the dawn of time, pretty much. I mean, it goes back to like the Ming Dynasty, and they're talking about different civilizations and different countries and how they've risen to power and economic power and how they've declined over time. It talks about the Chinese and the Dutch and the British and America and China. And there's a lot of stuff in there about America and China. Like the last two chapters are all about that, which is really interesting because now that I hear you've heard a lot about China in the media, but now after reading the book, when they talk about it, I understand it more because he really delves into both sides and sort of the mindset and the cultural aspects of both. It's a really cool book. Ray Dalio. Check it out.
Yeah, it's been on my list to buy. I read his just Principles. I read that book. I really liked it. But the Changing World Order, I've had a number of people recommend it. I'm definitely gonna have to pick it up at some point. And that one you're using for both of them, for both the real estate and general life wisdom.
Yeah, I think I would say definitely. I mean, it's almost a history book, but it's a history book on finance. So it's financial. So it's not, like I said, it's not really mechanics of real estate, but the economy and how it works and how cycles work is directly affects real estate. So yeah, I would say it covers both.
All right, perfect. That moves us to the next question. This is for your younger self. So let's go back to the Matt who was still out there in acting. He hadn't even gotten his digital marketing career started yet. Let's go back to him, look him in the eye, give him one piece of advice moving forward.
I think that the key to my success has been persistence. And so that's what I would say is continue to be persistent and just keep going after your dreams, whether those are in acting or
whatever it may be,
or real estate or who knows. Yeah.
Consistency, persistence, that is the key to any success. Love that. So let's move on. This is your Superman strength. We are all gifted with unique strengths that we uniquely give to this world. So what is your Superman strength?
Oh, see, I didn't know the questions. Persistence is my superpower. I'll come up with another
It could be the
one.
same thing because a lot of the times these things are very similar. So if that is your superpower,
I have another one. I have a secondary superpower, which is attention to detail.
Okay.
I learned it from a design director. I think I actually learned it from my mother too, because she was very just always meticulous about things. But there was a design director that I had when I worked at Showtime, who I remember I was building websites, right? And so she made a PSD, a Photoshop document of the website, and she's like, "Build this," right? So I build it, and she looks at it. She says, "It's wrong." I said, "How is it wrong?" And she's pointing at the screen, and she's like, That's off by 2 pixels. That's off by 1 pixel. That's off by 5 pixels. And I was like, how do you even know that? And then she ended up taking a screenshot and built like a grid with an overlay of what she had actually, what her PSD was and what I had built. And she was right. She knew pixel by pixel. And so that whole time that I was at Showtime, I think I got trained on like really. So I do that now, when I'm looking at spreadsheets, when I'm looking at deals, like I really look at every single number, make sure everything matches up. All the formulas in my spreadsheet are perfect. Like I just kind of have been trained to have that attention to detail.
Man, well, that is definitely a crash course in detail, is learning pixel by pixel. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, that leads us to the next question. This is for locations. You've invested in a number of areas, and there are plenty of square miles out there in the United States to buy up. So give me one metro that you are most excited about investing in today.
I'm working on a project in a really exciting area called Hudson, New York, which is about about 2 hours north of New York City, about 40 minutes south of Albany, which is the capital of New York. And it is a booming area. It's an opportunity zone. So there's tons of development, a whole bunch of things going on there. Tons of people moved up there during COVID or permanently or have second homes. There's some famous people who live up there because it's a really cool town. They're calling it like, the new Brooklyn. It's or the other thing I heard is they call it the downtown of upstate. It's a really, really cool area. So Hudson, New York is pretty awesome.
All right, shout out to Hudson. That leads us to the second to last question. This is about mentors. None of us are islands. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. So who is one person who has contributed significantly to your career today?
I'm not going to call out anybody in particular out of respect to the fact that I have had a number of mentors that have gotten me to where I am. When it comes to multifamily, there has been the 2 multifamily like mentorship programs that I have been and continue to be a part of. I think those, both the person who runs them and also those communities as a whole, have been instrumental in my success. So, I mean, someone who was a mentor of mine is now a business partner, right? Like there's a lot of people. So I don't want to single anyone out. It wouldn't be fair to the others.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, especially in real estate, we have so many different. I know myself, I've had plenty of mentors that I've learned from, that I've done deals with. Every person moves me a little bit farther than I was before. So, great answer. That leads us to the very last question. You've given us a lot of good advice, a lot of things to think about. So I'm sure people want to reach out and get in contact with you. What is the best way for them to do that?
The best way to reach out to me or to find out more info in the book, or if you want to download that free resource on syndication, sizing up syndications, just go to Picheny.com. It's P like in Peter, ICHENY.com. You also sign up. I got a free newsletter that has investment tips and comes out every month. People tend to really like that a lot. So just go to Picheny.com. It's all there.
All right, perfect. So that is Picheny.com. I will put that URL in the show notes. So if y'all want to reach out to Matt, get that book that he's talking about, go ahead and click a little more in the description. It'll pull down the full description, and in there you can find Matt's URL. All right, Matt, that wraps it up. Thank you very much for hopping on the show.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun, Gabe.
Absolutely. For everybody who's here with us today, thank you guys for showing up. You are the reason we do this. So if you guys have any questions whatsoever, reach out to me, Gabe at therealestateinvestingclub.com. Other than that, I hope you guys have an absolutely fantastic week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Real Estate Investing Club. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode as much as I enjoyed putting it on, and we're able to pull some actionable advice that you can apply in your own investing today in the field. Before you go, we have a gift for you. If you're a new investor looking to get started, or an established investor looking to take your investing to the next level, I've created an ebook just for you, available on our website. This ebook will cover how I was able to create both active and passive income in real estate with very little money to start with. In it, I will address the 3 most often cited obstacles new and veteran investors run into by showing you how to find deals that are actually deals, how to finance a deal with little to no money down, and how to exit those deals for maximum value. And if you get the ebook today, I am throwing in a bundle of bonuses, 7 of them to be exact. The first one will be the off-market lead generation blueprint, which will take you through the exact systems and processes we use to generate off-market leads like clockwork, which is the most important skill when it comes to creating wealth in real estate. The second bonus is the A to Z REI systems and vendors guide, which will allow you to peek under the hood of our business and see the exact tools, systems, and even the vendors we use to see the success that we do. And the third bonus is the top 100 best performing keywords pack, which will give you the exact keywords we use to target motivated sellers online using PPC ads. The fourth bonus is our contracts bundle for wholesaling and renting real estate, which will give you access to all the contracts we use in the field to execute all different types of transactions. After that is the Investors Quick Analysis Calculator and Offer Tool, which will allow you to quickly calculate whether a deal is an actual deal and will allow you to create an offer automatically from those calculations. This is a lot of bonuses that I said. I'm just going to keep going down the list. Number 6 is the Investors Daily Success Tracker, which is a tracker you can use to ensure you are taking the right actions day in and day out to reach your financial goals in real estate. And the last bonus is the Wholesalers Template for Quick Assignment Cash, which will give you the templates we use to present our wholesale deals professionally and efficiently to our buyers. Whew, that is a bundle. So it's a mouthful. You get all of those bonuses for free when you download the ebook. All we charge is the admin cost to run the show. So if you're interested in the ebook and the bonus bundle, head on over to the website at therealestateinvestingclub.com. Click on Get the ebook bundle at the top of the page to take advantage of that deal. And with that said, I hope you have a fantastic day, an even better week. Keep rocking real estate, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.